We're going to look particularly now at the difference between technical challenges that you face in yourself and in your organization and adaptive challenges. There's some articles coming up by Ron Heifetz as well as Chapter 10 of Branson Martinez where you'll be getting more information on this. But it's important to have this framework simply as a way to engage the next steps in our leadership discussion. So a technical challenge in an organization has clear goals. You can name the goal. Here you see a man walking, and it's pretty obvious what the goal is. There's a town out ahead, seems to have a center to it, and so even just intuitively you can say that you can see the goal, that it can be named, it can be clarified. So inside technical challenges then, as you're providing technical leadership, you clarify the goal, you work with the group to name the methods that are possible for getting there because everybody knows those methods. You're working with current knowledge. You may have to add on some new information. You may have to gain some specific information, but overall you have the knowledge necessary to do that work. There are available resources. It may not be easy to come up with the resources, but they're available. There's familiar roles and adequate competencies. It doesn't mean that there isn't new training that has to go on. Usually there is some kind of additional training and some adapting of roles, but still it's within our normal imagination. It's within our normal ways of doing business. Predictable and manageable change. It's all within the competencies of the group. And we are who or what we need to be. We're the right people to do this because we already have these capacities to see, to act, to collaborate, to achieve. So look at this next picture. And the question is, where's he going? Or how's he going to get there? Or what does he need to get there? And this is why adaptive change is a very, very different kind of leadership. I need to say you need to be good at technical challenges in order to be able to do adaptive challenges. When you can name goals and do all the things of the previous slide, that's critical. You've got to be able to have good competencies for that. But an adaptive challenge is one where the future is murky. You really cannot name the goal. You could name one, but that would be misleading. It would, in fact, obviate the real challenge. So you can't name the goal. It's murky. You don't know the road to the goal. There's new learning, but it isn't just kind of an add-on, get some more data. It's actually learning new processes, learning whole new ways to perceive that are not currently part of the way the organization is working. The resources aren't identified, so you don't know what you need, and so you certainly don't know where you're going to get them. There's unfamiliar roles. This is not in anybody's comfort zone. So there's unfamiliar roles and competencies. It's all unpredictable. The change is uncontrollable. You're not in a predict, manage, control mode. And we're not the people we need to be to do this. This is one of the most difficult parts of this, is if you're convinced we've got what we need, then it's a technical challenge or you've mislabeled it. Ron Heifetz says that the first job of a leader is to identify the adaptive challenge. Can you name, here's the technical parts of what we're facing, but here are the adaptive parts of what we're facing. And I also want to then say, back to one of the issues that many of you dealt with in your essay, a starting point for dealing with adaptive challenges is being able to know those that are about you. That these aren't just about the organization you're working in, which certainly would be adaptive challenges there. But what are the adaptive challenges about your own leadership? This is not just needing to acquire a few new skills. This is saying, I'm really clueless here. I really don't know what I need to be. I don't know what I need to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know where I'm heading. So is there an element of your current work? Is there an element of the responsibilities you have that even while you plod and work at it and name a goal and repeatedly are able to actually in that situation be able to see that you aren't naming the right goal, or you fail in getting there? Those are the kind of situations that are adaptive. It's coming in a new situation or a new situation confronting you. You look at the organization and you think, I really don't know how to do this, and I'm not even sure what this is anymore. So naming your personal adaptive challenges are critical, or you're not going to have the clear sight to be able to see the adaptive challenges in the organization. This material all comes, like I say, from Ron Heifetz, some in a book he also co-authored with Marty Linsky. And this is what they work at, as saying, here are the tasks you have if you're leading an adaptive challenge. First of all is get on the balcony. By that they mean, they're talking about dance floor. And you need to get on the balcony so that you can look down at the dance floor. And as you do that, you can see movement. You can see who is connecting with whom. You can pick up the rhythm and the directions of everything. And that's what you need to be able to do in adaptive situation, adaptive challenge. You've got to be able to get some distance and identify what's going on. There's even two other steps of this first one that are a little bit more difficult. You need to be able to step up on the balcony while you're in the midst of the work. So you're in the middle of a meeting, you're in the middle of some discussion, you're in the middle of some activities. And you actually, while in the midst of it, you step onto the balcony and you even see yourself down there and you see, here's what happens when I walk in the room. Here's what happens when this other person said this. Here's what happened when I said this. And you're observing this from the balcony while you're actually engaged in the situation. Not only that, but if we're talking about team leadership, you actually need to be able to do that with your team. And so the conversation becomes one of perceiving, observing, attempting to name, nuancing the naming. All of that's an imaginative work right in the middle of the situation. And so as you get on the balcony then, the hard work, the first work is to discern the adaptive challenge. That doesn't mean name the new goal more accurately. It's saying, I think what's going on here is we're real clueless on the generational issue. We can do lots of planning and have lots of activities and get volunteers, but we really don't know what we're doing on the generational life of our church and our neighborhood. And so you can name a theme, an area that is the adaptive challenge without saying, what we need to do is we just need a better youth program, or we need to have more adults talking with youth. Those are all positivist, technical changes. And so it's really an adaptive challenge when you're in this situation where you can name a theme, but you can't name goals or who you need to be yet. Now, managing the holding environment is a much more complex theme, but it is saying that you need to create an environment as a leader among the participants that is safe enough for the participants to speak and to experiment, but also volatile enough, unsure enough, pressured enough to where nobody's going to sit where they are. So they're aware that they can't stay the same. So holding environment makes it obvious you can't stay the same. There's too much pressure here, while making it safe for voice and for experiments. That's what a learning community is in the fullest sense. That's how you create this space as a leader where everyone is on a learning trajectory. And so that's why the next point, you regulate the stress, both for yourself, but also for those you're working with. You're probably aware that if the pressure goes up too much, people shut down. The anxiety level means that you retreat into yourself. You try to cut out all the pressures. This is much of what goes on in an anxious country as we have now. It's when immigration things are happening. It's when economic things are happening, when certain societal capacities are breaking down, that people get anxious and retreat into themselves, retreat into the familiar, retreat into people like themselves. Churches do this. They'll turn in thinking that's where there's safety. And so when the pressure's too high, learning shuts down. So can you create a situation that can lower the pressure in some ways by the way you name the theme, by the way you set up the environment, by the way you deal with your own stresses, by the way you deal with your own adaptive challenges? Now, I'm not wanting to take the route that may be common in pastoral conversations about how you become the non-anxious presence. I actually think there are times advantages when a people see the anxiety of their leader. A leader who can say, I'm clueless right now, and this is important. And it's really, I don't want to stay clueless in this, but right now that's where I am. And so it is actually helpful to be able to be anxious in a good sense of the word, pressured, unsure, but know that this is important. And so the regulating stress levels is both at times bringing the pressure down sometimes, but also knowing when to raise it. And that's hard work, and it needs to be done tentatively. And what you'll notice as you do it is different people in the room act differently. So there's not one way to do this that makes it work for everybody. That's why this kind of leadership is so incredibly difficult. Is you're creating an environment in which this holding community, this learning, this naming and taking new steps becomes possible. So while you create that homing environment and regulate the stress, then you focus attention on what is the adaptive theme, the adaptive challenge, so that you start creating the conversations around that. And that deepens the conversations, the capacities of the conversation. This is where things like the PT cycle becomes helpful, because it kind of says, are you working with each of these elements, each of these steps as you do this work? You need to give the work back to the people. This is not the job of a person with a title or a role. That the best of learning environments, learning community, dealing with adaptive challenge says, this isn't what you hired me for. This is our work together. And so the way you give the work to the people is you help them own it. You help them see this is what they've signed up for. This is what it means to be this particular people, this learning community. And as you do that, special attention to protecting leadership voices from below, because often God is at work in ways that we're not expecting. The voices that actually start pointing to the road often aren't from their usual places. And so all of these different tasks then become incredibly important for a leader who's going to be working on adaptive challenges.